if you're not delivering something that's really valued by people longer term, then you're not going to be in business for that long. So a lot of people view corporate purpose or organizational purposes as something that's nice to talk about, but in the last 5 years, it's become really critical and central to the core of the profit and the growth of a business. It's not just a nice to have anymore.
Welcome to the Manage Self, Lead Others Leadership podcast with Nina Sunday for experienced and aspiring people managers. This show will help you explore ways to become a more intentional leader. Each episode, host Nina Sunday speaks with some of the brightest business minds on the planet who share a passion to elevate and transform team culture. Workplace culture hides in plain sight. Is yours flourishing? Join the movement to make your workplace a better place to work. Are you ready? Because it's time to manage self, lead others.
A strong sense of purpose or knowing why drives extraordinary outcomes. And Phil Preston helps people and organisations decode purpose to improve their performance and impact. Author of Connecting Profit with Purpose, Phil Preston is founder of the Business Purpose Project and co-host of Corporate Conversations on Purpose. Welcome, Phil Preston.
Great. That's great to be here, Nina.
And we go back at least a decade when I was state president of Professional Speakers Australia in Sydney. And then you followed on 2 years later as state president. So,
Right.
So now we're both sort of involved in podcasting. You've got 2 podcasts, is that right?
That's right, yes. Corporate Conversations on Purpose is one that I do. I co-host with a lady in Miami Beach, Florida. So we've got a very US, Australia, plus Asia, Europe focus from time to time. So that's great. And then I have Talking Purpose in Business and Life, which unpacks sort of people more at an individual level.
Yes, and we'll put that in the show notes, so the links, so people can go listen. And I'm hoping you'll share some stories about real life examples of putting purpose in practice, Phil.
Oh, I think we'll get there.
And my first opening question is, what's the biggest mistake, a purpose mistake, organisations make?
Yeah, so first of all, we'll differentiate personal purpose from organizational or corporate purpose.
Oh, yes. What's personal purpose?
Well, we can come back to that a bit later, but
Yes.
It's really, what we want at a personal level, which is quite different to, what an organization can't play to every employee's purpose. So they have a stated aim, but to summarize it, a corporate purpose is the benefit to society that a company is intending to deliver in a profitable way. Now, those final couple of words there, in a profitable way, some people go, oh, hang on, profits and purpose, you can't mix those. But for a business to be sustainable and to perform and do well and be competitive, it has to deliver both those things. So I think in terms of, I can think of 3 key areas that are probably big mistakes, but number one would be not recognizing there's a link there, that if you're not delivering something that's really valued by people longer term, then you're not going to be in business for that long. So a lot of people view corporate purpose or organizational purposes as something that's nice to talk about, but in the last 5 years, it's become really critical and central to the core of the profit and the growth of a business. It's not just a nice to have anymore.
Yes, and if an organisation wants to be perceived as innovative and not stuck in the mud, then they will have a purpose statement. The biggest mistake an organisation can have is not having a purpose statement.
That's right. Well, not really understanding that it's part of the commercial proposition of the company. If we go a little deeper into that, you then start thinking about, okay, as a company, what are the social indicators that would tell you if you're delivering on your purpose or not, or what is the social change you're looking to create? So I'll give you an example. Unilever is a large multinational company that many people know and probably use its brands. It sort of went through a big change process, and making sustainable living commonplace is their purpose.
Right.
And you can actually break that down into environmental indicators, social indicators. It does, from a customer perspective, trying to help young women in terms of perceptions about body image and those areas. So you can break it down into some key social or environmental outcomes. And I think that's this comes back to challenges. A lot of companies go, oh, we've got a purpose statement, job done, down tools. let's just carry on. But they don't actually get the benefits, because you've really got to then layer it into what people do every day. And if
that's right.
Yeah, in terms of the second big mistake is making it real for people, is where I'm getting called in more and more to help make that link between the corporate purpose and what people do every day, but also people's personal motivation and their personal purpose, and making the link between that and the organizational purpose too. So there's a lot of dimensions to this. And I think, Nina, when you said I wouldn't think of a volunteering day as being purpose. Well, some people do. Some people don't, but some people do. So,
I said it's not enough.
Yeah, well, it's a facet though. But you'd be surprised if you go into a room, and when I walk into a room and say, "What does purpose mean for you in your life or in your job?" I'll probably get 20 different answers from 20 different people. So my role in decoding purpose is to do just that. Say, well, let's really understand what we're talking about here, so we can now move forward together.
That's fantastic. So you make a distinction between personal purpose, team purpose, and organization purpose.
Yeah.
Can we talk about those three, what they are, and maybe some examples, please?
Yeah, sure. So let's go personal purpose to start with. So it's not appropriate for employers to be saying, I want to understand your personal purpose, because there's things going on in people's lives that are very different, some private, and you just can't go there. But they can give people tools for helping them to understand their purpose. And the challenge in the personal space is that, again, if you walk into a room and say, what does purpose mean to you, Nina, and everyone else, what does purpose mean in your life? Then again, you'll probably get 20 different answers from 20 different people. So someone might say it's about being about providing for their family. Someone else might see their purpose as helping the environment. For someone else, it might be maximizing their potential and the potential of the people around them. And someone else might see it as helping make the world a better place in some area. So there's 4 very simple examples of how people interpret personal purpose. And I'm not an advocate for the idea that you need one overarching purpose statement, because as we've just seen with those 4 different ideas, purpose is a very complex thing. So I don't think you'll find one overarching statement that tells you that will sort of solve everything in your life, because we are looking, Maslow's hierarchy of needs says we need certain things. And so, just having that base level ability to live and get by is the first thing. And we want to then belonging and connection. And then ultimately we want to be transcending that and helping others. So there's a lot of levels to deal with. So I do a lot of work helping people understand what are the different dimensions of purpose and what does it mean for you. And it comes back to what's really meaningful for you, and what sort of goals then do you want to set around those meaningful things.
I worked with a coach about 10 years ago, and he got me to identify my personal purpose, and I've stayed with it ever since. I love seeing the lights go on in people's heads.
Yeah.
Because I do transfer of knowledge. It really started with speed reading, but now it's with everything that I do. So that switches the lights on in my head.
Yeah. And that is that can be very oriented towards the work that you do. Yeah. And it could be your whole life could be around that, but it doesn't need to be. And I find there's actually some studies in the US that found people get purpose anxiety if they can't figure out what that overarching purpose is in their life.
We want to avoid that.
Yeah. So
get a coach.
Mild depression. And therefore, I don't see the need for having a lot of pressure on yourself to create that overarching statement. If you have it, great. If you don't, that's fine.
Oh, listen, if anybody's listening to this and they've got purpose anxiety, either Phil or I can help you with that with some coaching. Team purpose, that's a really important one, because you see, I've had an epiphany. We're leading up to Epiphany. Just the last few months, is that I've been doing a lot of work with middle managers and leaders on leadership. I've realized that the gap really is teams understanding how they operate and also having a team purpose. So can you give me an example of a team purpose?
Well, the team purpose is sort of wedged in between personal and organizational. So in a way, it's when I run sessions or do speaking, the order I do it is personal, organizational, and then come back to team. Right. because, once you need those two things before you tackle the team bit in the middle, which is challenging. And really the team bit is, well, what is the role we're playing in the delivery of the organization's purpose? So we can think, the accounting department is playing a certain role in helping a company function. The janitor at NASA, we found, is helping to put them on the moon. But you would need to break that down a little bit to operationalize it, as you would understand. So you can't just leave it at saying, I'm putting man on the moon. You say, well, I'm doing that by, helping people in this way. So what I typically do is help teams. First, we understand what the organizational purpose is, and then say, okay, what's your role in helping to deliver that? And then can you craft a narrative to help you explain that? Because if I was turning up to a barbecue, I'd love to be saying, look, I work for XYZ company, and our purpose is to, help put a man on the moon. And my role in my team to do that is to make sure we have the finances in place to be able to do it properly.
Right. That's a bit like what people call an elevator speech.
It is.
So when people ask you, what do, you've actually embedded a statement around purpose in that description. Yeah, sounds good.
That's right. You've got the big picture, and then you've got the next level down, the team piece. And if you like, you can introduce a personal piece as well. That's because I'm really motivated by X, Y, and Z. So therefore I love doing this, and so on, and give some examples there.
And of course, organization purpose, that often it's tied into mission and vision statements, isn't it?
Oh, there's a whole, you've uncovered a nest of blanks there, Nina, because there's a lot of confusion about vision, mission, and purpose. And again, there's no global standard here. So my job is to help organizations figure out what sort of structure is going to work for them. Because for me, I see vision as the world you'll create if you're successful in delivering your part, and everyone else as well. So it might be, a world without hunger or a world without waste, something like that. But the reality is you're not there now. So your purpose is your role in trying to deliver that vision.
Oh, okay. That's a really beautiful distinction, Phil. Thank you so much. I think that will give food for thought for the people that are listening and watching. You also, in your beautiful article, Fresh Thinking for 2023, and I'm sure we can put in the show notes a link to that article. That was fabulous. It's what inspired me to invite you on to Manage Self, Lead Others. You talk about embedding purpose into policies, procedures, and practices. Can you give me any examples of that, please?
Yeah, sure. So one example was really that team piece we talked about a minute ago of narratives, creating a narrative of what the team does in terms of delivering that organizational purpose. But then what you would do is to say, okay, how do we know if we're doing this well, and crafting KPIs around that as a team. Another example of just doing this, which is a little bit more qualitative, is a team I know within a certain company that they're in the recruitment space. And what they do every Friday afternoon is they have some drinks, so they knock off at 3 p.m, have a casual drink, but they go around the circle and they say, okay, what did we do this week to help deliver our purpose?
Oh, isn't that nice?
It's actually, think how easy that is, and yet how powerful it is, because people then on Monday aren't working in going, what are we doing this for? It's just another paycheck. They're actually quite connected to what they're really there for, which is beautiful.
And I was just wondering whose responsibility that is. Now, if you've got a supervisor or a manager, perhaps it's their responsibility, but maybe they don't resonate so much with that. So any individual contributor could actually ask that big picture question, couldn't they?
Oh, it's a great point, a great question, because quite often when if I'm going into the division or department within an organization, quite often they'll say, look, at the top level, we don't understand what our organization's purpose is, but that doesn't mean they can't be doing something themselves. So we almost do a black ops type of approach here and say, okay, well, what do you think your organization's purpose is? And we sort of create some shadow and then start working on what they are doing within that. And sometimes they might want to keep it a little bit underground, but other times they might become the driver and the energizer in the conversation for other people in their organization in terms of operationalizing it.
Yeah, one of the things that people who are employed and they're not yet managers, maybe they don't want to be managers, but you can still be intrapreneurial, which is to make it a skill and a practice and a discipline to occasionally ask those big picture questions. That it might get you noticed for promotion, but even if you're not interested in that, it still is a way to create team cohesion. Is that right?
Yes, and it's the leadership piece. So it's saying, I can be proactive here. I don't have to wait for someone to come and tap me on the shoulder and tell me how to do it. I should be thinking about these questions and asking them ahead of time. I guess the manager piece is more to wait and implement what's passed down, but you might be waiting a long time. That's fine if you want to operate that way, but the leadership piece is really getting on the front foot.
Yeah. All right. So in your article, you talk about the 4 success factors: capacity, cohesion, creativity, and critical thinking. Cat's out of the bag. Those are the four areas. Let's, shall we take them one at a time?
Yeah. Should we do, okay, very quickly, I won't dwell too much. You can probe and prod where you like. So the capacity piece is starting with employees as individuals and saying, how can we ensure everyone's at their best? And in my mind, that's about equipping people with tools and methods they can use to help prioritize things in their life, because there's no point prioritizing things that don't have any meaning attached to them. What we find, a simple example, I don't know if Nina, if you've been in this position, but people come to you asking for your contribution all the time and you have an inability to say no. Sometimes you end up sort of carrying around a load of tasks and voluntary things you're helping everyone with. But if you actually had a plan, you might say, okay, I'm going to do these 3 things this year. And you have a plan around that. And when people approach you, you can say, I'd love to help you, but I've got a full agenda and a plan for this year. Let's talk again in 6 months' time. So just help, that's more of a time management thing, but, it's just a simple thing that means a lot. But I do, I guess, run a lot of sessions which helps people unpack what's really meaningful for them in their lives, and work comes into that. It's
okay, so capacity is your ability to take on the expression or the behaviors that express purpose.
I would say it's walking into work being at your best every day.
Yeah.
To then help your team and your organization do what it does best.
Now, that's something I'm very interested in, because the silo effect is often referred to, but sometimes when I talk to teams about the silo effect, people go, what's that? And it's like, hey, it hides in plain sight.
Yes, it does. It's and it's still around. It's been around for a long time. The greatest thing about purpose is that it gives you an anchor or a common goal that is immovable. So if your organization is agreed on its purpose, then you as a team have unpacked what it means for your team. Yeah. Then if people start playing their own personality or sub-team games and are driving personal agendas over the team or organizational goal, it's very easy to bring it back. Now, cohesion is really just forming that understanding of organization, team, and individual's role. But purpose gives you that common foundation by which you can always say, okay, are we on the right track here?
And one of the silo busters is collaborating across teams. And yes. I know you have a strong background in collaboration. Can you give us one tip on how to create collaboration maybe across teams, so that we can avoid this us and them effect of the silo effect?
Yeah, I think the first thing, the foundational thing, is to call it out and say there is the us and them thing. Like, we as individuals have our own thing going on in our head, and when we have different priorities in life. But we know we only succeed if we have a balance between our individual, what's good for us as an individual versus what's good for our community. And the same thing happens within organizations. So it's getting people on a common page to accept and understand that we've got to be cohesive here. We've got to be pursuing the common goal. Sure, some individual agendas will get in the way from time to time. We've got to accept that's not acceptable, that we're really about the common goal. And if you're going to lose people as a result of that, you'd have to question, was that a bad thing?
Your third success factor is creativity. Well, that suggests innovation.
That's right.
So what would you like to tell us about that?
Well, that's about people being inspired to come into work every day and do their best and contribute a lot and drive towards great solutions, for whether it's for customers or other people within their organization. So if you have a great purpose statement as a company, people believe in it and they can see it in action, then I think you're going to be inspired to turn up to work every day and give it your best. And one of the books, it's about 10 years old now, but I fall back on this. It's a great book called Tribal Leadership, which found the teams that become consistent high performers are those that are attached to not just beating their competitors, but trying to deliver, they call it a noble cause, but I would call it purpose.
Is there a key question that people can generally fall back on? Like, I know with innovation, you can say, is there a better way to do this? Or is there another way to do this? Have you got some other key questions that will help people exercise their critical thinking muscle?
Yeah, I think the key question is, what is the main issue? And that's a question in the process. So you collect your facts, you understand what your assumptions are. I mean, those assumptions could be right, but you've just still got to recognize that you need to maybe check that they're all right before they become facts. But then from all that, what's the main issue we're dealing with? When Medibank was hacked and customer data was out there, health records and health information was out there, what is the main issue for them? It could be about, for example, yes, there's all this stuff going on. We've got to patch it up. We've got to plug it. We've got to decide whether we pay a ransom or not. But the real issue might be, are we going to survive as an organisation or not?
Yes, that's a real big picture question.
Yeah, so if that's what the committee decided, or the crisis committee or executive team decided was the main issue, then you've got to start orienting your actions around that, not just being tactical or immediately reactive. And what we see is a lot of teams just reacting very quickly to things rather than doing that full strategic think through.
Yeah. I think if there's been some sort of an error or a mistake, another question to fall back on would be, what is the root cause?
Yes.
Root cause questions.
That's
because it's like, this happened. Yeah, well, what's the root cause of that? And then actually go as deep as you can to actually identify where you can make changes that will, like the 80-20 rule, a 20% change can have an 80% result. Yeah.
That's right. And you've also got to ask, what's the opportunity here?
Well, we're going to close, but I'm wondering if you've got a really neat story or an example about how some organisation put purpose into practice and it made a big shift or difference.
Oh, yes. I've got a wonderful story, and I'm going to come back to Unilever again here because they really spent 10 years doing this transformation under Paul Polman, and they did a lot of hard work there. But how does it pay off? Well, here's a great little stat for you. Well, firstly, they recognise when young people come into their organisation, they're not coming in for a career for life. They're probably going to, on average, be with them 18 months. That's the reality of what's happening today. So they say, that's fine. When they come in, we'll run an induction process. We'll help them understand how their personal purpose links to Unilever's purpose. And so people come in with a pretty positive mindset about that, but also they recognise, well, what's the win-win we can create while you're here with us? So that's the mindset they're in. That comes in even to induction. And how that plays out in terms of benefit, when we look at global surveys of pride in company, the average pride in company score globally is 15%. 15% of
they're
people,
proud of their company.
Only 15% of people say, I'm proud of my company.
Oh.
At Unilever, what do you think the figure is, Nina?
Well, at least double that, maybe
at least
more.
Double. I'll give you a hint. It's somewhere between 89 and 91.
Well, see, that's a shining example.
Yeah, so it's 90%. Now that means their recruitment costs, turnover costs, everything, the quality of the talent they get is so much better, et cetera, et cetera. So I think this is how it pays off. But it's hard work getting there, but it's worth investing that hard work because it really pays off financially as well.
So how could people read up more about the Unilever process? Is there a book or a...
I cover it very briefly only very briefly in my book because a lot of it was still playing out while I was writing that. There are some Harvard Business Review case studies on them, and there's actually a great case study on how they fended off the takeover bid from Kraft Heinz.
Right.
And it really exposed what Kraft Heinz was doing poorly and what Unilever was doing really well.
I'm glad you mentioned Harvard Business Review because that's where I get a lot of my best knowledge. It's top of its game. So have a look at HBR. Well, our time together has come to an end today. And Phil, I could talk to you all day.
We could, Nina. I don't know if our viewers would love to hear us all day, but we would. We would love it.
well, because I no longer live in the city of Sydney, we don't catch up like we used to. And I was always impressed by your leadership when you led professional speakers chapter, but as well, I've seen your whole business blossom, especially with your book. Tell us a little bit about your book, Connecting with Purpose?
Connecting Profit with Purpose.
Connecting Profit with Purpose, yeah.
Very quickly, it's around strategies that companies have adopted to actually not only do good in the world, but do it in a profitable way. So some of the examples around that, look, there's a whole plethora of them, and you'll find it quite interesting. And, one, for example, how a CEO was helping to reinvigorate the community around a shopping centre, a whole range of different environments, large and small companies, and different types of strategies.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Phil. It's been an absolute joy to hear your stories. So
Great.
Thank you very much.
Nina.
Here's to a fabulous 2023.
Nina Sunday is on a mission to help leaders transform culture. To book Nina Sunday CSP to speak at your conference, visit ninasunday.com to request a proposal. Nina travels from Brisbane, Australia for in-person presentations Australia-wide. Twice certified virtual presenter, Nina Sunday presents virtually, globally, for any time zone.